Hi, this is Shane Starr, and today I am going to go over Socionics functions in the polar position, or rather, information metabolism elements, which is the Socionics names for the functions. I do have some notes here, and as I said in my last video, this is going to be kind of a standalone video. I don't want to make too many references to MBTI similarities and differences, although I'm sure that will naturally come up along the course of the video. I want to try to keep this one shorter because I think I go on too much sometimes. But let's, without further delay, let's just get started. So we have the same 16 types basically. The introverted types are a little bit mixed up if you're used to MBTI types. But my last video we went over how the function definitions are different. So this video, I'm not going to deal with that. I'm just going to take it as it's defined in Socionics. Classic Socionics, Sociotype online if you want to look at that. And then I'm going to take what I've learned about these functions or IMEs and apply it to work, particularly in an office environment, similar to what I work in, even though, as you can see, it's not all about office. We have a nice environment here, and there's more to life than just being at a desk in front of a computer. Okay, so let's start off with PoLR SI. What does this look like? Okay, so we're talking about our ENTJs and ENFJs. They're going to have the same sort of issues, but the ENTJ is going to be a little bit more mental, and or actually the ENTJ will have a little bit more on the physical side of the polar function, at least from what we can see. And then the ENFJ comes up more in the mental. This is because in Socionics, the flavor, for lack of a better expression, the flavor of each function is affected by its positioning to a greater extent than what is the case in MBTI. So in ENTJs, what does this look like at work? Basically just type A personality driving themselves to ignore things like rest, food. They're likely to not set aside time for relaxation or free time. And there's some of this I can relate to, but like I always get 8 hours of sleep no matter what, and these guys don't. They'll stay up all night burning the candle at both ends. And I think in the life of work, when we think of being more productive at the cost of your health, basically, I would say to remember that the candle that burns twice as bright burns twice as fast, and consequently half as long. So try to pace yourselves a little bit more, and I think that's all we can tell them. But ENTJs aren't the types to really listen to that. They're going to keep pushing forward. That's just in their DNA. ENFJs, it's similar. They have more of the way PoLR SI comes up in them is more, not in terms of physically burning themselves out as much, although that can happen. It's more, they have errors in their daily routines. They're the types who they forget things, at least in my experiences. They'll forget, we have a routine of setting the alarm and locking up every night, for instance. If you were to give me a couple types that are most likely to forget something like that, ENFJ would be one of them. Now, that's due to more factors than just the polar function, but what happens with them is they get so mentally running around gymnastics in their heads that they forget what's right in front of them and the more mundane daily tasks, things to do. So I would say for ENFJs try to pay good attention to detail. Now, keep you out of those things. And I think that's all I have to say for Polar SI in the workplace. Polar FI, this would be our ESTPs and ENTPs. And there's some overlap here, as is in the last one. These guys are bad at reading people. Now, in the ENTP, they oftentimes don't see how other people in the office view them. And as a result, they can ask for favors from people they shouldn't. They can play down the significance of a social faux pas or something. I think they literally don't understand sometimes that a certain boundary has been breached, or they're not supposed to ask for something in a certain way. If you were to tell me, what type is to just go right up to the very CEO and say, hey man, you got to put me on the top floor. I'm a shaker mover. You got to get going. ENTPs would be right up there. And it's like, you don't say that to the boss, but they don't know any better. For ESTPs, this comes more along, there is some of that about not knowing how to read people or how people read them, but this comes out in moral mistakes, trusting the wrong people. Like in my job, this would be like slipping someone, an item or an offer, like say a carpet cleaning they weren't supposed to get, and they think they're making friends, and then next thing you know, that resident has a problem with their sink being clogged. Has nothing to do with the ESTP, but they're going to say, yeah man, that guy gave me a free this or that, and he told me that he'd take care of me, and my sink's clogged up now. And the ESTP's like, dude, how could you do this to me? Like, I helped you out. And they don't understand that, the residents aren't necessarily your friends. Some of them can be, but more often or not, everyone is out for their own advantage. And I think, ESTPs are known as the con men and con women of the 16 types. But oddly enough, ironically, as it would be, they are the most likely to be conned and be taken advantage of also. So they gotta look out for that. Know who to trust. So that's what I would say for them. Last but not least, for these guys, for both types, I would say the golden rule in practice will keep you out of a lot of trouble. Do unto others how you would want them to do unto you. Okay? All right, Polar and I. My recent rusted typing comes in here. ESTJs and ESFJs. We'll start with the ESTJs. These people, and maybe I should include myself among them, they're bad at prioritizing tasks. And I notice this is the truth with me. Like when I have important tasks and then I have urgent tasks, some matters are both urgent and important, earthquake or something, right? Some matters are important but not urgent, like a final account statement. Other matters are urgent, but in the grand scheme of things, not that important, like someone's locked out of their apartment. It's urgent, but it's not the end of the world. A lot of times when my plate's full, I get in the morning, I have my desk set up, and these things start coming at me. I'm thinking, okay, what should I do first? And oftentimes I think I picked the wrong thing, or I get so tied up on some details that I don't realize 40 minutes has gone by. Now I only have 20 minutes left to get my move-in ready. And it's like, how did I do this? And then the manager will come up and just say, what I do is I look at the most important thing first. It's like, yeah, I know that. It's just in the moment. I didn't practice it. I made a choice, and sometimes those choices work, sometimes they don't. But on a bigger scale, I think with ESTJs, and this is where it starts to go into ESFJs, it is easy to miss the meaning of life because you're so wrapped up in what's happening right in front of you, what you're doing, not just this year or this month or this week, but you get so wrapped up in what am I doing today that, and then each day you wake up and it's just a reset. It's like the mail. You get your mail, you go through it. Next day, guess what? More mail. Same thing. Next thing you know, 10 years have got behind you, and like the Pink Floyd song, no one told you when to run, you missed the starting gun, right? It's sad, but it's true. It's so easy for time to just fly, and all of a sudden it's like, what happened? I always thought that I would go on vacation, or I would do this other thing, or I was planning on doing this, and it's like, life is what happens while we're making other plans. Moving on to more specifically the ESFJs, I think they have poor self-reflection more often than not, and that's where that meaning side comes in. The ESTJ will have that existential crisis when they realize that they've let a decade go and all they've done is work and clock in and clock out, for the last 10 years. ESFJs oftentimes don't even get to that point. Other types are smart or well aware enough to fix the problem before it starts. ESTJs notice too late. A lot of ESFJs, and they can be brilliant, so don't take this the wrong way. ESFJs, they don't even know better. They're just like, what? Today's a new day. Yeah, let's go. And it's just like they don't even realize the greater meaning of what they're missing out on. Maybe it's better that way. Maybe they know something we don't. But I would say for ESTJs and ESTJs and ESFJs, I would say be cognizant of the meaning of what you're doing, the big picture. All right, moving on. Polar TI. This is our ENFPs and ESFPs. I think Polar TI comes out different in these. I'll start with ESFP. They tend to be impulsive. They think, they act before they think. They're not good at boring work, accounting stuff. And there are some ESFP accountants, don't get me wrong, but a true ESFP or SEE will not be happy in that kind of role. The key thing I see with ESFPs, I know they make a lot of mistakes, like a lot of paperwork mistakes. And I think that comes from Polar TI. I think they oftentimes lack the systematic analytical skills that go along with mastering tasks and procedures. It's not enough just to be able to TE read it. You have to kind of understand what you're doing and know the hows and whys besides the whats, and I think ESFPs could just look at it and say, the hell with this paperwork. Look, I could just move them in already without doing that part. Boom. Then a month later, hey, where's that key receipt? This guy says we never gave him a key. Yeah, I gave him a key. Well, there's no receipt here. Oh yeah, I skipped it because I was in a hurry and didn't really care and blah, 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 right? For ENFPs, this comes more in the way that, as brilliant as they are, it's very difficult for ENFPs to just give straight answers almost to anything. They always beat around the bush so much that then they forget where the bush is, They tend, again, to not be as good on boring type of procedures and protocol items. They have a difficulty understanding systems. But again, an ESFP, if you break it down for them, they can give you a black and white yes or no answer. ENFPs have a really hard time. It's like, did you give the key receipt? Yes or no? Well, I mean, we were talking and yes or no? Well, first he said this. It's like, dude, it's an easy question. Did you? Yes or no? And you never get there with them. They never, they have to work their way up there, and then you have to eventually figure it out for yourself. So I would say for for these guys, for both types, attention to detail. The devil is in the details in office work, and I think both these types would probably be better off in a different environment than a pure office type environment. But if you are an ESFP or ENFP and you work in an office, just know what you're doing. Understand what you're doing. Be the best you can be, and that means mastering those boring details too. Okay, Polar SE, that's our INTJs, which is INTP and MBTI, and INFJs, which is INFPs in MBTI. So Polar SE, there's a little bit of overlap with the Polar TI, and that is that the Polar SE people, they tend to just get really bogged down by the regular, everyday, we'll call them menial tasks. The mundane, these guys are the most likely to forget to clock in or out, if they are on a time clock. They also tend to, they're just kind of in dreamland. It's like there's this old story, and they made a movie out of it, the Secret Life of Walter Mitty, and it's like, knock knock, is anyone home? And the guy's just kind of gazing off somewhere in his imaginary world. Polar SE's got to be a difficult thing, because no matter what type you are, you live in the world. No matter what kind of job you have, it involves some sort of meticulous detail that's maybe not as exciting or imaginative as one would like. Even if you're an artist, you have to book gigs for yourself. You have to be able to market. You have to, it's so easy if you have Polar SE to forget those things. So I think for these guys, they need to have good people around them to keep them engaged in the real world. Another thing about these guys, they don't have that much initiative. The Polar SE types I've worked with, once we had a flood in our building in Hollywood, not at this job, but at a different place. And the Polar SE person was just sitting there on her phone. It's like, dude, you're ankle deep in water. And she's like, oh my God, and it was just like, and then she didn't know what to do. And it's like, we have protocols and procedures for this kind of thing. It's like, so yeah, try to stay focused. You don't want to be on the road with a Polar SE driver, I'll tell you that. Moving on, Polar TE. This is your INFPs, which is INFJ in MBTI, and your SEIs or ISFPs, which is ISFJ in MBTI. So for Polar TE, now here's the weird thing is, Polar TE would be like, you can't work in an office, right? But remember, these guys with Polar TE have mobilizing or third slot in MBTI TI. So that's why so many INFJs, I think, have really good TIs, because their TE is so bad, they have to really work on their TI, which is something they can do. And what happens is they get mistaken for TI leads sometimes, because their TI becomes so strong. And again, that's because of the weak TE. So what does weak TE without that makeup thing look like? One big thing, man, it's laziness. They don't like to work. They're never going to be at the top of the rankings on any work related metric. They're not going to work fast. They're not going to work hard. They're going to be at their own pace, to kind of do their own thing. And to those of us like my type that just bam, 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 energizer, never miss, never take a break. It's almost like the opposite of me, and so I have a hard time relating to them. It's like, if this sucks for you that bad, get a different job. There's other stuff you can do. But so the thing is, for TE polars, you'll want to keep up on your tasks. Try asking why less and just asking what more. Just do your job. Do your job, get it done. Don't go down the rabbit hole about how much your job sucks. That's just going to backfire. And try to work on efficiency. Read some books with your TI, and maybe that'll help. Okay, moving on. Polar FE. Now, from an MBTI standpoint, I totally get Polar FE. I think I have Polar FE. From a socionic standpoint, with FE being more about just emotional demonstration, it looks a little different. So, it's still people, for people with Polar FE, this would be our ISTPs, or function-wise ISTJ in MBTI, or INTPs or INTJs in MBTI, SLIs and ILIs. They can, like, SLIs can seem really weird. Like, think of the autistic guy at work. And I can relate a lot to this, unfortunately. You know, overdressing, maybe, seeming kind of quiet, maybe, even creepy to some people. Like at a party, they're sitting in the corner reading a book, guilty as charged. A lot of times they just seem weird. The trench coat guys who you worry about, being at the same school as on a bad day, right? Now, where those guys are weird, you get to know them, they're usually nice. And I'm not saying that's my type in socionics, but again, I can relate to that a lot. I'm nice, it's just I get misunderstood, I think. Now, the difference, the way Polar FE works in INTJs or INTPs, ILIs, it comes across, instead of being weird and creepy, they come across as like being cold and unresponsive. Like, instead of not being able to fit in, they seem like the true antisocial types. Arrogance versus shyness. They seem to really not care, if not just flat out dislike people. So if you're a Polar FE person, you got to try as hard as it is and as much as it goes against your mobilizing, FI. You have to learn how to fit in with people better. It's a work in progress for me. I still get told almost every other day, hey, you don't have to wear a tie. I want to wear a tie. I like wearing a tie. It's my little thing, It's not to impress anyone. It's just my own little deal. So, but sooner or later, I'm going to lose the tie to fit in better. That's the kinds of sacrifices you have to make as an SLI, or if you're an ILI, give out a few compliments now and then so people know you're human and not a mean Terminator robot, and that's about it. In the end, you'll only go as far as your popularity, and this is a nod to those FE leads. It's in the end, it's not what you know, it's who you know. It's really true. Look at our politics, Anyway, moving on. Last one. Polar NE. What does this look like? This is LSIs, that's ISTJs or ISTPs in MBTI, or ESIs, ISFJs, which is ISFPs in MBTI. Different types. It's not the same thing with different letters. Trust me on that. With Polar NE, it's difficulty with change, difficulty with ambiguity in socionics, difficulty with uncertainty. We'll start with the LSIs, ISTJs. They follow protocol and procedure to a fault. They're unable to see outside the box. And for their careers, what this means is they end up settling for less. Not just in careers, in relationships too. They could have got better and they didn't. They tend to settle for less, and they tend to they stick to the facts so much, like the opposite problem of the ENFP who never gets to the point. The ISTJ sticks to the point so much that the point becomes meaningless, because if you can't relate it to anything else, it's like, okay, and you're always having to ask these guys for additional context, and it's like pulling teeth, because they don't, it's like, what are you hiding? Just tell me what happened, and I think that's the thing with ISTJs. That's why they make such great security guards or cops. Now for ISFJs, what I see with these guys, they're more politically and personally rigid. Like, if they don't like someone, that's it. It's like, forget about it. Ask an ESI who hates Donald Trump. Say, if Donald Trump says 2 + 2 = 4, is he telling the truth? And watch the ESI just, they'll like explode. They won't be able to figure it out because they can't get past their own feelings. They can't see a different perspective than that rigid, it's this way or the highway thinking. So I think if you have polar NE, remember, if you're the ISTJ, you're going to regret the things you never did more than the things you did in life, and that includes your work, which is the topic of our discussion here. And if you're an ESI, I would say the biggest thing at work is don't take yourself and your opinions so seriously. Maybe that person you have a grudge against, maybe they're all right. Maybe the problem's with yourself and not with the other person. So again, I think I would like to revisit this another time when it comes out more smoothly. But overall, I learned a lot in this project with the MBTI stuff. Then a really in-depth, deep dive of comparing and contrasting the functions and the IMEs and seeing the overlap, seeing the differences, and being able to speak on those things with comfort, and not being like, I don't know what I'm doing. Anyway, I think that's it. Good listening if you got this far, and see you next time. Out.